Welcome to 101 East. I'm Steve Chow. Australia's outback, home to a multi-billion-dollar cattle industry, is facing a serious drought. Farmers are in debt, and many have been forced to kill thousands of cattle to stop them from dying of thirst. Long-range forecasts look grim, as scientists predict longer periods of hotter weather. Evan Williams travels to Australia's remote interior to meet those battling the big dry.
Northern Australia is in the midst of one of the worst droughts in living memory. It's hitting the country's cattle industry hard. Australia supplies massive markets in the US, China, and across Asia. But over the past decade, vast areas of Queensland have faced the hottest summers on record and no proper rain for 3 years. 80% of the region is now in drought. Thousands of cattle have already perished. Those that remain are starving. 49-year-old grazier Debbie Viney is fighting a daily battle to keep her cattle alive. The drought has cut her stock from 1,500 to about 400 starving cattle. With no grass in the paddocks, she spends her money on molasses to feed them.
My dad and my sister and my brother-in-law, they're always sending us out groceries. Feed the animals before you feed yourself here.
Debbie works this land with her 17-year-old son Darcy after separating from her husband years ago. Like many graziers here, Debbie's now borrowing more from the bank just to survive, driving her further into debt.
I sold some cattle to the export market at their low dollar that they were given at the time, and it got me just enough money to buy this hay and buy the molasses for these cattle. And that was the end of me then. But that don't allow for the kid with a pair of new boots. Don't pay for nothing else.
If she doesn't feed them, they'll become too weak to move and vulnerable to attack. Not far from the main herd, Debbie and Darcy have found one such animal, a calf too weak to escape and killed by dingoes.
And they'd have been eating him alive, and he'd have been trying to get away from them. And the other dogs would have stayed up on the head. The other ones are still, yeah.
I think that's all the try she's got.
Nearby, they find the calf's mother, so exhausted from trying to fight off the dogs to save her calf, she can no longer stand.
Look at your face, it's a mess, yeah. If you come around here, you'll see what crows and things do to my cow's eyes.
In their current weak state, if cattle lay down for too long, their limbs become useless. They are then unable to stand and they'll die.
The crows have been attacking her while she's...
Yeah, because she can't get away. Can't lift, she's not strong enough to get up when she's on her side. And her end result will be death very soon. I'll try again, poor bugger.
Debbie's determined to try and save her. It's a daily struggle of life and death that will determine if this family will make it through the drought or lose the farm.
Come on, you can do it. Come on.
Yeah, you want to hold this?
She's strong enough. Go, Darcy. Go to that front. Just hold her now, don't let her go. She must stand there or she will go back down. She seems stable.
You go.
You go. Just stay away and watch her now. Go, Darcy.
Debbie says in good times a healthy cow and calf would be worth $800, and with hundreds of her stock already dead, Debbie can't afford to lose another.
I mean, it's absolutely heartbreaking seeing this.
It is. But there's nothing you can do about it. It's all out of your control. Not a damn thing you can do.
If the cow fails to stand, they'll have to shoot it, like they have hundreds of others.
But we're just so sick of shooting them. We will try anything to keep them going. Because it's just, yeah, it gets so much. You're doing really well, Bubba. Gee, she's not good, bad eye, I know.
Debbie decides to take her back to what she calls the hospital paddock so they can keep her standing.
And then she'll be a slow trip home, but one cow saved is better than a bullet.
Across Queensland, many farmers like Debbie are fighting a losing battle against the drought. A few hundred kilometres west of Debbie's farm, another cattle farmer, Kathy Parry, is driving through her property. Instead of grass, the land is covered by endless dust and dirt.
As you can see over there on that side, there's not even a sign of tussocks over on to your left there. It's just terrible.
At 66, Kathy's worked cattle here all her life, but says she's never seen it so dry over such a wide area.
This is the worst by far. And so far it doesn't even look like rain.
3 years ago, the Australian government banned live cattle exports to Asia over cruelty concerns. When the drought hit, many farmers had too many cattle. They had nothing to feed on, and Kathy's herd here has been decimated from 3,000 to just a few hundred. These are her breeders. If they die, she'll have no way to build up her herd again if it does rain. Every day, she has to feed her cattle a nutrient supplement to keep them alive.
There's no vitamins in the grass, so without that they'll probably die. You could be paying.
She has to borrow money to buy the supplement, a bill now running into the hundreds of thousands of dollars.
We would not spend that money. That money, you know, is just not, well, it's not spent, and it's because we haven't got it because the cattle prices went foot up, they all collapsed, and we didn't have fat cattle to sell, so we sold nothing. And so we've sort of went from 12 months without selling anything. And so then, well, then you go back to the bank and for a bigger overdraft. That's how we've survived.
So that means, and everybody's pretty much the same?
Oh yes,
Imagine?
I would say.
So that means you're getting more and more into debt.
That's right.
To survive the drought.
That's right.
But it's not just the mounting debt that's troubling Kathy. Like many graziers here, Kathy's had to make a terrible decision when faced with a cow that can no longer move.
We lost a lot in this paddock. But that is mostly what it is. They've in calf and they just can't get up. So then you shoot them.
Kathy's had to shoot hundreds of cattle, and it's taking a toll.
Oh, shooting them. I just hate it. As I said, I never shot anything until last year. 47 years and I'd never shot a thing. Couldn't shoot the calves, I had to rear them. The mother, she was dying. I promised her I'd rear him and I did. Yeah, that's the hardest of the calves. Shooting them's a terrible thing.
Isolated by vast distance, most graziers face this crisis alone. But there is one group offering some help. Brian Egan knows firsthand how hard farming can be. More than 10 years ago, he lost his own property during another long drought.
I lost my property, which was way back in 1999 through drought and depression and all those sort of things. It never rained there for 3 years. And we just didn't have the money to keep on going, and so we left. But we had to walk off for nothing. I got very crook, very sick with depression. And they hospitalised me for nearly a year or a bit over a year. And originally they didn't hold much hope for me because I tried to commit suicide a couple of times because I just couldn't see any future in myself. And,
Really?
And it just sort of went from there, but I did get better. And when I was getting better, a psychologist said to me one day that he said words I've never forgotten. He said, Brian, he said, go out and find somebody worse off than you are and help them.
Today, Brian is doing just that. He formed a charity called Aussie Helpers that helps farming families in need and which has given away more than $5 million in drought aid. This morning, Brian's visiting Debbie and Darcy. He's delivering groceries donated by Aussie Helpers.
And I'm also the mailman today.
Yes, you are. Thank you
I'm
very
bringing
much,
you all
Brian.
your bills.
Oh, bills and more bills.
How you going?
Thank you. And how you
Darcy?
been going?
Thank
You
you.
can carry that, mate. Stick it in the fridge.
Yeah. You better go deal with it,
Better,
love.
better to give it to Mary to look after.
Yeah. This is all Aussie Helper. Bought me all the milk that I need.
He's also supplied Debbie with bags of milk formula to feed orphan calves. Debbie says without this donation, the calves would die.
They won't make it. Gets pretty hard about there because if you go to the stage that we have where you're putting so many of them down, the last thing you need is the next one and the next one. You start to think, yeah, it's not a good feeling. Yeah, the buckets and the feeders.
These are the calves Debbie's trying to save. Without them, she can't afford to rebuild the herd if it rains.
I was going to show you this fella. He's doing really well. Hop up, Skinny. Hop up. This is typical of what you see. And this fella here, they're hollow, and yet I've been feeding the hell out of them, but they're just so far down, and they really need pallets. They need calf pallets to help boost them up and get them going. But there again, everything's so dear, like you are.
You're gorgeous. And why can't you get the pellets?
Money. Just haven't got the money to give them what they need. You can't stop licking, can you?
So if you can't keep these alive, what happens to the future for you?
There is no future, is there? No future for anything once you, there's nothing left. Yeah, no, I don't think about that. That's not a place I go.
Every few hours, Debbie and Darcy have to check their sick cattle are still standing and help those that aren't.
These ones in here are the real sick ones. Anything that has gone down and couldn't get up. And what we actually do is we go along with the tractor, and any of them that can't get up here, you lift them at least 3 times a day, each beast that's down, because a cow can't stay down for too long. So we lift them up, and it gets them back where they can go and eat and drink or whatever. And yeah, this is the hospital paddock. She's up.
For Darcy, it's a constant job of emergency care. Despite their efforts, most days they find cows that have not survived. What happened here?
He walked into the Gilgai for a drink, and he, being too poor, he sunk in the mud and it held his feet there, so he fell over. He almost got up, but he just didn't quite have the strength after the trauma of being in the Gilgai, and then we had to put him down.
We shoot him.
Yeah.
When was that?
Last night. It's not nice having to shoot him. He's worth a lot of money.
How much would he be worth?
His grandfather was $30,000 bull.
Wow. As a good breeder.
Yes.
To help his mother get through the crisis and save the farm, Darcy's stopped his high school lessons. He just doesn't have time.
With the work that I've got, he can't do his school and help me too, and this is your livelihood. If you lose this, I've got nothing left to feed him or clothe him either, or get him an education once he does get through. But he's got ideas, I think, of geologists and things like that, but you just can't stop doing what he's doing at the moment. Without him, I'd be buggered.
Dealing with this daily struggle, not knowing if it will rain or if they'll keep the farm, is creating a hidden psychological crisis. As the banks close in, there have been 16 reported suicides in the region since the drought started. Locals talk of more farmers just disappearing. These graziers live far from any support services, but today some help is on the way. Psychologist Dervla Longnan decided to help Brian after hearing him speak at a fundraiser. She's donating her time to go with him and visit farmers on their land.
This is a psychologist who's flown up from Brisbane to help us with some of the people we've been speaking to, because we can't get any local help here, or help from people who are supposed to be paid by the government to be here, who don't come out here to visit these people. And, you know, the only way we find them is by going out to see people and finding them.
Brian's going to take Dervla to visit all the graziers he can. First on the list are Debbie and Darcy. Dervla wants to give them mechanisms to cope with the sustained stress of trying to save their cattle.
The scale of the problem at the moment is absolutely enormous. We need a huge amount of help for these people. It's obviously financial assistance to get resources out there. As you quite rightly pointed out, these people aren't going to come into town. Pride is a big issue, and also logistics. They don't have the petrol, they don't have the money. These people are literally third world, they've got nothing.
The following day, Brian takes us to meet another farmer who's even more desperate. Debbie Smith is 45. She borrowed to buy this land 20 years ago. Separated and with a daughter at boarding school, Debbie works the land herself. She's lost hundreds of cattle to the drought and has sunk further into debt to feed those she has left. This is her last bale of hay.
It's virtually instant. It's magic.
How are you feeding the 500 that you've got?
I'm not. I can't.
Right. So what's going to happen to them?
If it don't rain, I would like to say. There's prickle trees for them to eat, but most of them haven't got much leaf on them either.
Yeah. Are you all right? This is pretty hard for you, isn't it? And have you had any conversations with the bank about what happens?
Yes, we went to mediation with them 12 months ago.
Yes.
And June they could have started proceedings that they haven't done. Legal proceedings. They have demanded their money. They want out.
So the money for the place, they want to close it down, do they?
Yep.
They want the money back.
Yep.
Do you mind me asking how much you owe?
4.2 million.
With that debt and further lending to feed the remaining head, Debbie says there's little chance she can pay it off without rain. Yet, like most graziers, she faces the stress alone.
I think it's tragic what's absolutely happened. For such a rich country with so many resources, to leave people so isolated, and these people are the soul of our country. They are the people that put the food on our tables. I personally feel that we've nearly abandoned these very people that are the core to our society.
The drought is hitting country towns too. No one is spending, threatening small businesses and driving many families from the bush. During the last failed wet season, one town even drew up plans to evacuate all 3,000 residents as it was about to run out of water. But it's the isolated graziers Aussie Helpers is most worried about. Today, they've paid for a semi-trailer full of free hay and supplements to be shared out among those most in need. They are the only group offering this sort of critical aid. A few bales each won't go far, but Brian admits this is more about getting farmers to break the daily grind. It's a rare chance for them to meet up over a free barbecue, breaking their isolation. Debbie got here using fuel cards donated by Aussie Helpers. Without them, she couldn't afford to make the journey.
I've got on 12 bales of hay and 10 bags of feed, cattle feed, and 4 bags of dog biscuits. And the cattle feed to put out in amongst the 500 head that I've got left, it'd be doing well if there was anything left in 10 minutes.
Does it help at all?
It does. It gives me some relief. Yeah.
The relief is temporary. Debbie knows the bank could come and close her down any day. For farmers, there is a federal government program. It offers a 0.8% lower interest rate on loans if their farms can be declared viable. Garth Powers is an active advocate for local farmers and a campaign manager for one of the local politicians. I wanted to know if the government relief is effective.
At the present time, the federal government are saying that they have got measures to help, and they are practically worthless. As far as the interest subsidy, I haven't heard of anyone claiming that subsidy in the pastoral zone. And as far as income support, that is impossible to get because you have to have assets less than 2.5 million, and that's only the horse paddock.
That's right. Most of these properties are so big that
That's
actually
right.
you're looking 2-4 million, right? For
Yes.
very basic.
That's right.
So they don't qualify for the
Any
household
assistance?
support?
No.
Because the assets are too large?
Yes.
Even though they don't have any cash?
No, they could be broke and they can't get it.
Surrounded by properties already foreclosed, Debbie Viney thinks emergency action is now needed.
The best thing that could happen was we got a block on all interest payments or payments back to banks. If we could get a hold on that. I'm not saying we don't pay them back. I'm just saying put a hold on it, whatever it takes for it. Once it rains, then that we start paying everyone back. You can't keep paying interest when you haven't got anything to sell.
Without some form of relief, graziers like Debbie are caught. No rain means she can't farm, and she can't sell either.
To sell it for what you would need to even just cover your debts, you would need the rain so that your place is a viable business. So to sell now, you won't cover your debts.
Long-range forecasts indicate little if any rain will arrive this coming wet season. And studies have shown the scale of this drought cannot be explained by natural climate patterns, but is instead the result of man-made carbon emissions. All Debbie knows is this drought is tougher than any before.
This is prolonged across Queensland, is what makes it so, and not just Queensland, Australia. Normally you have a drought and it's in like 1 or 2 shires. Not nearly every shire you look at should be drought declared if it isn't. And that's what makes it so hard.
For many, the heartbreaking impact of that new reality is already here.
If it doesn't rain this season, it will be the end of it. Not being able to feed them. It's like having to tell your children that there's no food tonight.
These graziers are used to droughts, but climate studies predict longer periods of much more intense temperatures will soon dominate across northern Australia. And that could create a bleak future for a vital industry and an iconic way of life.